Hey everyone, this is Ryan from Athix Fitness, and you are listening to Season 2 of the Athix Approach podcast, the podcast where we highlight inspirational vegan athletes and what they do to absolutely kill it on a plant-based diet. If you haven't already, it would really help out if you subscribed to, liked, commented, and or shared any of the content I'm producing, including this podcast, Athix Coaching Services, articles and training programs available on athixfitness.com, videos on YouTube, and more. Links for those will be in the description, and I truly appreciate everyone listening for all of the continued love and support. In this episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with ZACK BELKNAP, a natural WNBF pro-vegan bodybuilder and NASM certified personal trainer. ZACK placed first in his pro debut bodybuilding show, and despite it not being his direct pursuit, also has some extremely impressive strength numbers under his belt, with a 495-pound squat, 345-pound bench press, and 520-pound deadlift. ZACK went vegan in 2015 mainly for environmental purposes, but he quickly found himself drawn to the moral aspects above all else. Switching to a vegan lifestyle was a big motivator for him to push his bodybuilding pursuits to the next level. The myth of plant-based diets being inadequate for building muscle is still a pervasive theory in the general population, and ZACK uses that to drive his ambitions in the sport. ZACK is an extremely impressive natural bodybuilder, reaching up to a massive 220 pounds in his off-season at 5'10", and one of the best examples of what can be achieved without PEDs on a plant-based diet. His fellow competitors are almost always in shock to hear about his diet after seeing what he has achieved, which is great activism in itself. ZACK can be found on Instagram at Bold Body Fitness LLC, which is also the name of his personal training business, and you can find more info on that there. Thanks so much again to ZACK for taking the time to come onto the podcast, and I really hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed our chat. So yeah, man, first of all, thank you so much for taking, a little bit of time to do this. And sorry again about the technical difficulties there.
No worries, and it's my pleasure. I'm excited.
So yeah, do you want to do a quick intro for yourself? You do a way better job than I would.
Yeah, sure. My name is ZACK BELKNAP, and I live in Eugene, Oregon. I'm from Conifer, Colorado. I own my own training business here. It's called Bold Body Fitness. And I've been vegan for 7 years come this February.
Nice. Yeah, it's been 7 for me now in February. That's like, whoa, actually same exact time. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I remember I was like super stoked about it because I remember reading something like it takes 7 years for you to regenerate like every single cell in your body.
Oh yeah.
Like, I have become a plant.
Dude, we are literally just made of plants at this point.
Yeah, that's awesome. I am broccoli.
It feels good. So what got you into let's touch on that first, man. So what got you into veganism first of all? Did you jump in cold turkey or did you go vegetarian beforehand or?
Yeah, I went straight for it.
Okay.
I think I don't know. I think it was off of recommendation. But I watched Cowspiracy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was with this girl at the time, and as soon as the movie was over, she was like, "I think we're going vegan now," and I was like, "Yeah, I think you're right." Shit, like wasn't ready for that at all. But at the time, I really considered myself to be like an environmentalist,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just blatantly obvious that I couldn't be both things, like a meat eater and an environmentalist, and so that definitely like started me on the path, was like the environmental thing. But
Mm-hmm.
since then, like now the priority for me is ethics.
Mm-hmm.
But that was what I needed to sort of like open that door for me.
Mm-hmm. That is actually hilarious because it was almost the same exact story for me. I was vegetarian for 4 years though, didn't quite commit to going vegan for that long. I was like in college, like broke college kid, and actually, yeah, me and my partner at the time watched Cowspiracy, and that was opening the door to being like, well, you know what, like I have to go vegan at this point. That's so funny. It's almost the same story as you.
Yeah, dude, we were on the same journey.
Yeah. So were you already lifting at this point? Were you or did you get into it like shortly after?
Yeah, I started getting into lifting in high school when I was like 16.
Hmm.
Just I was like always playing sports, and I just started having more fun in the gym than I did actually playing my sports,
Hmm.
uh, which at the time was primarily baseball, but I played everything like hockey and football and all that. And
Hmm.
yeah, I just always had way more fun in the gym. So quit playing sports, and that kind of like carried me down my whole like life path, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, I knew I wanted to be in fitness, and I got a degree in exercise and sports science. And anyway, by the time I had gone vegan, I that would have been like, I don't know, like 8 years into lifting or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I was definitely like, I had a couple of workout partners, and I was the smallest one at the
Hmm.
time. So I think I had like maybe a little bit of a foundation, but for most of that time, I never really understood the concept of like eating in a calorie surplus.
Hmm.
So it was just a lot of like staying the same.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, when I made the switch, I think I was at like 180 body weight.
Hmm.
Um, and currently I just hit 220. So that's pretty cool.
Dude, you're a
Uh,
big boy. Jeez.
yeah, dude.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
Holy fucking shit, man. You're huge.
Yeah, well, I'm a little chunky right now though, so but that
I
was
mean,
the
dude,
goal.
I don't think anyone outside of the the internet lifting community would ever say that. But I know what you mean. It's like that I think we're all holding ourselves to that crazy standard of leanness and such, being into lifting and stuff.
Yeah, totally. Have you ever
Man, you're
competed?
okay, you're huge. Sorry, what was that?
Have you ever competed?
No, man, I'm a tiny guy, dude. It's all illusions for me. I'm 6 feet tall and I'm like 180 pounds. I kind of just stay lean. But
Yeah.
yeah, dude, I had no idea you were that big. Because like 220, even if you do say you're like slightly like you're bulking and you're slightly higher body fat, man, that's massive, dude. I
Yeah,
had no idea you were that big.
I'm just as shocked. um, like, yeah, I just came off my contest season in July
Mhm.
and started kind of like reverse dieting and stuff, and was like, I just want to get to some like uncharted territory.
Mhm.
Which the heaviest I had been was like 208.
Mhm.
And I just kind of like it just started clicking, like both the program that I'm on and just sort of like this meal plan that I made for myself. It just started working, and
Mhm.
um, I hit my goal, which was 215, and then like a week later, I think I was like 217, and I was like, let's just go. Like I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
yeah, yeah.
see how far I can take it. I've got like
You gotta
four
hit.
abs right now, so I'm like, it's acceptable.
Yeah, yeah.
My partner,
That's amazing, man. Yeah, it's like you got to hit that 100 kilo goal, right? 220 pounds. That's a good achievement.
yeah, I didn't even think about that. I don't think kilos often enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Us over here on the in the United States, we're not thinking about that too much unless you're powerlifting, I guess.
exactly. Yeah.
Are you so you kind of you train pretty damn heavy too. Like you're not I see like some of your lifts and such and like you're like sumo deadlifting what like 450 pounds or something for reps, right? Like you kind of you train heavy more often in general or
I like to, yeah. Like I think that a lot of my motivation, how do I want to put this like in a way that makes my relationship with the gym sound healthy. Like I do this because I love it.
Mhm.
um, and because I think like that progress is really addicting and all of that. But a
Yeah.
large part of my motivation is just that belief of like vegans can't this and that.
Hmm.
And so I want to be stronger than all the people that are saying that shit,
Hmm.
and I want to beat them in bodybuilding competitions. And like that's just a huge driver for me. Is like, well, I'll prove you wrong.
Yeah.
So so yeah, I do love training heavy, and I also just like to use that as fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever competed in powerlifting or anything too, or is it just bodybuilding really?
Yeah, I've never done a sanctioned event. The gym that I
Hmm.
work at, we host a powerlifting meet every year, but it's unsanctioned.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I won that 3 years in a row, but like I don't know, it's not really, since it's not sanctioned, I can't really claim that. But
Yeah, sure. And that was never your main focus, really, right?
no, no, always just maybe like something to do for fun in the off season.
Hmm.
But yeah, I like being strong, but I would rather, if I had to choose between being strong and looking strong, I would choose looking strong for sure.
So what drew you to competing? Was this after you already went vegan or was it beforehand?
Yeah, it was after.
Okay.
Let's see. I think it would have been like a year, maybe a year and a half after making the switch.
Hmm.
Um, when I like started my business and I started renting space out of the gym that I'm at now, which is called Genuine Fitness. The owner of this place, he's an avid bodybuilder and he is a coach. And at the time, he asked if I was interested, and I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I guess that's something I could do like one day." And then, a few months later, he kind of just was like, "All right, you're in prep now," and I was like, "Okay, shit, here we go."
Okay.
And that season was like remarkably successful.
Mhm.
So that just kind of like ignited that particular passion. And
Mhm.
yeah, that season I did 3 shows in 3 weeks, just all back to back. It was super intense. But I went from like first place to I think I don't know like first, second, third. I was in top three for all 3 shows, but two of them are NPC shows.
Mhm.
Um, I was in classic and bodybuilding, so I was like 5 top 3 placings, and I was like, I guess this is a thing that I can do. And next year, I won my pro status with the WNBF,
Mhm.
and yeah, that's that's just kind of like been the focus ever since.
Wow. Okay, so to break down your competition history, so you started competing like 6 years ago at like a local meet, and then what was like your progression, like step by step, sort of?
Yeah, it was mostly local. Like
Okay.
over here on the West Coast, we kind of have like, as far as the natural shows go, we had
Hmm.
like Washington and California, but not really anything in Oregon. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, my first show, it's called the Northwest Royal. At the time, it was in Kirkland, Washington,
Okay.
and I did that, and then I just did a couple NPC shows that were. One of them was also in Washington, and then the last one was actually here in my hometown in Eugene. So and that they're all of them were local shows. It's not like I went to nationals and like crushed it or anything like that.
Hmm.
But I think I've been able to do well in both federations, like in the NPC where it's untested. I don't know, that was pretty cool, and
Hmm.
it was sort of like a double thing. Like I get to go and represent like vegan athletes, but also natural athletes, and
Hmm.
there's definitely something really special about beating someone that's neither of those things. Like it just feels very good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's that meme going around, for years about like the natty vegan lifter and just, it's like some scrawny dude or something. But yeah, you're proving him wrong, man.
yeah, yeah, and this that feels super awesome and also kind of like surreal. But the following
Hmm.
year, I went down to Sacramento, placed second at a really big show there, and then I think I did
Hmm.
actually two of the same NPC shows. But this year was one of the cooler. It was one of the better seasons that I've had. I
Hmm.
did uh, again. I competed in both feds. I did several NPC shows and a couple WNBF shows, and um, I got to win the Oregon State Championships this year in classic physique, which was super cool. And the the MC like came up to everyone that won an overall. He would like ask them if they wanted to say anything. I was like, you
Hmm.
bet your ass I want to say something. So of course I plugged veganism, and it was just trying to be like lighthearted or whatever, but it was like, I promise you, everyone in the audience, like you're not gonna lose your gains if you just eat some tofu. Like just
Yeah.
think of it, like everything that you think is a lie when it comes to veganism and bodybuilding. Like you've been told a bunch of bullshit. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
super
that's a really important thing to touch on too. I feel like we could really talk about that for a while. Um, but yeah, it's sort of weird like treading that weird line between like what can you say in terms of like promoting veganism without coming across as like, that militant vegan stereotype that I feel like a lot of us are a little hesitant to sort of perpetuate now because it's such a stereotype where we always feel like we're sort of walking on, on eggshells, I guess.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a tricky thing to navigate. And we also like whenever you get into like an argument or whatever with a non-vegan, you're they're taking in with them into that argument all of like the other arguments they've ever had with a vegan or even
Hmm.
like the stereotypes that they have. And I was having a discussion with a guy recently, and he was telling me how like vegans constantly spread misinformation, but during the duration of this conversation I've been like in a friendly way like sending him all these peer reviewed articles that are supporting my
Yeah.
points, and
Hmm.
he's coming back with strictly opinion. He like never
Yeah.
once shared anything with me, and I'm like, you're the one that's saying some shit that's not backed with evidence. But
Yeah.
again,
That's
it's hard
that's a
to.
really, really good point because I feel like so many of us, we because of that, we go to the scientific evidence as like our main, our main, evidence, I guess, because we feel like we need to rather than just throw out opinions.
Yeah, but the one thing that helps like in this domain at least is just letting my physique and my like my history in the sport kind of do the talking. Like
Yeah.
that show I was just talking about a second ago, like I had just won the overall, so I was like,
Mhm.
like it gave me a little bit of credibility at least.
Yeah.
So yeah, that helps. But
Yeah. That's definitely a really good example, just leading by just being a good example yourself, just being jacked and healthy and everything. So you're a WNBF pro, right?
correct.
And that was as of a couple years ago, was it? Or I'm just trying to get like the timeline in order.
Yeah, that was 2018.
2018. Okay. And so for anyone who doesn't know, so when you qualify for like a natural pro card, does that open more doors to other competitions? Or what does that really entitle?
Um, what it really means is I can start competing for money against
Okay.
others. Yeah. Unfortunately, the way that it works is like not not every pro show has every pro division. So, for example,
Oh, I see.
like, one pro show might only have like masters bikini, open figure, and like I don't know, like men's physique. And
Hmm.
so, for as far as options for me on the West Coast, I think there's like three shows that have pro men's
Hmm.
bodybuilding. Um, but yeah, the main thing is you get to start competing for cash prizes,
Hmm.
which is pretty cool. It's a very costly sport. It
Yeah,
takes a
for sure.
lot.
Yeah. So, are you technically, I'm curious, are you allowed to kind of compete with untested pros also at this point, or where is the crossover there?
Yeah, I think the technical answer is no. It's highly frowned upon. The rule is I can't. I'm not supposed to compete in a in a division that I'm pro in. So I'm a pro men's bodybuilder in the WNBF,
Hmm.
which means if I were to compete in another federation, I have to compete in a division that's not bodybuilding. So
Okay.
that's why I did a lot of classic physique. Um,
I see. I see. Okay, that makes sense. So to kind of, I want to talk to you about a lot of the morals behind veganism and such, but I kind of want to close out all the bodybuilding stuff to an extent. I'm curious about what your training looks like and everything. Like, what's your training history and what's your preferred programming? Like, what have you seen the most success with, I guess?
in the past, I just was like a you might call it like an intuitive trainer, but really it was just like I'm just gonna do whatever I feel like doing every time I walk into the gym.
Mhm.
I like saw some flashy shit on Instagram, was like, oh, I gotta remember that one. Like I want to try this out, because it looks like
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, yeah.
And that got me like a moderate amount of success. Like that, I was doing that up until just a few years ago, I think.
Hmm.
Um, and then I just like kind of realized like I'm losing out on a lot of sort of optimal like performance or like gains by not tracking more data.
Hmm.
So then I just started making it real simplistic. What I'm doing now, I had some help from 3DMJ, so shout out to Jeff Alberts.
Oh, nice.
On like a double periodization program where like I'm going
Hmm.
from or double progression, excuse me, like 8 to 9 to 10 is like my rep range pretty much for most exercises. So um, I just like really enjoy keeping it simple. Like
Hmm.
rinse and repeat is kind of the name of the game. So
Yeah.
um, picking exercises that I like and that get me good progress and just do that um, for a long period of time. And just if I'm not, I'm either increasing in reps or in weight like every
Hmm.
day.
Okay. Damn, the Godfather's coaching you. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he helped me write a program out. I still claim Aaron Orton as my like coach.
Okay.
He's I want to shout out to him too. He's been hugely important in my success in the sport.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I was just became a huge fan of the 3DMJ podcast and was like, I got to reach out to these guys and just see um, what we can come up with because the program that I had written for myself was similar, but
Mhm.
it was just like RPE 10 every single day, and I was just like crushed, like so just devastated every after every workout. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna need someone to come in and give me permission to back off a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly what he did. So
Yeah, I can totally relate to that, man. I think anyone who's, really driven with this sort of stuff, we have that tendency to really want to push to failure, and
yeah,
it takes a lot to pull back.
totally. Yeah. And even just if you're like, well, last week, I did this for 100 pounds. So this week I should obviously be able to do 120, like
Hmm.
just maybe making those increments just a little smaller and
Yeah,
allow.
yeah. It's like we can't make that progression like like we've just been training for less than a year, but we still want to.
Yeah, man, that's like my biggest regret in life is that when I started, I didn't know more about like being in a calorie surplus and eating more food, and so all those like
Yeah.
movie gains I just like didn't get like that.
Yeah.
Just that crushes me.
Yeah, man, for sure. I was going to Planet Fitness for 4 years when I first started. I was like 18. So yeah, this is like, man, like 13 years ago now or something. How old am I now? 32? I don't know. Yeah, it was a while ago. So I was going to Planet Fitness and just spinning my wheels, not eating enough food, just constantly, not gaining weight. I was gaining a little bit of muscle at the beginning from the noob games, but I was doing the bodybuilding split and stuff. I feel like a lot of us can relate because we didn't really have the info back then.
Totally. Yeah, I think when I started, I just like walked into the gym in the high school and it was being supervised by the football coach and was like, I want to start lifting weights. And he was like, here, and handed me this booklet. And it was like bigger, faster, stronger, something like that.
Mhm.
And it was like a super basic, like one day was like 3 by 10, like or one week, and then another week was a 5 by 5, and another week was like a 3 by 3. Like,
Mhm.
and go through that shit. But it was based on like making football players better football players, not
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to do. And it was just I just kind of was just adrift in the world with like very little guidance for a long time. And
Yeah.
yeah, shoot, man.
Yeah, I was getting all my info from bodybuilding.com forums back then. And the hot thing was just doing the bro split because that's all I could find. And I was doing like, 1 day a week frequency for everything, like, a lot of curls and push downs and stuff because I was like, gotta train the arms. And so yeah, I mean that got me like very little progress after the first like 8 months or so. And then I ended up doing I guess probably a little more of what you were kind of doing, like a little more like powerlifting, strength focused, higher frequency, a lot of focus on like deadlifts, squats, and like bench. And then I made like new gains all over again. I was like, damn, like I wish I had this info when I was like, 18, just starting off instead of like 20, 22, 23. But I guess it's a lot of people have that sort of story where it's like, yeah, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and just gotta deal with it. It sucks.
At least we have it now.
Yeah.
And I did
Yeah.
eventually, like, you had that sort of second wind of gains, and that was how it worked for me too after my first season, where I was like, I'm intentionally going to get fat, like as fat as I can. And I had the same sort of experience. And that's where I'm at now. It's like, let's try and make that happen again. So
I swear by the people talk a lot of smack on it, but I kind of swear by the I don't want to say dreamer bulk, but I like really pushing the bulks each time. What do you think about that?
I'm about it. I'm all about it. Like currently I'm up about 45 pounds from my stage weight, and not really any intention of slowing that down. At least not for 5 to 10 more pounds. But I kind of think like that's really the only way to go about it. Is not only like a pretty heavy bulk, but also like patience. I'm
Hmm.
starting 2 years off now between seasons, because otherwise, like,
Hmm.
there's going to be like really negligible differences. I might have
Yeah.
like 2 grams of extra muscle if I were to compete every year, but not
Hmm.
enough.
Yeah,
So
right. Speaking of the 3D J guys, I was following Alberto when he just did the competitions and such, and seeing him after all these years of lifting naturally, still making progress. Like he compared his progression photos and his back, it just blew the fuck up. It's just so inspiring to see. I think he's if he's not 40, he's like knocking on it. So it feels good because so many people are like, oh, you can't make progress for that long natural, like you're capped out by like late 20s, early 30s or something, and you see someone like that who's doing everything right, and it's just super inspiring.
yeah, totally, man. I was down in LA too this year for Worlds, the WNBF World Championships. Got to see him
Hmm.
on stage, and that was super cool. And you're right, like his upper body is ridiculous. Like his back is just bonkers, and then everything from the front, you're just like, who is this guy? Like how long have you been at this? But I mean,
Yeah.
I guess that's the whole point, is like you just stick with it for a super long time. And yeah, he was fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. What is the difference in person versus the photos?
Yeah, cool. Well, photos don't move, first of all.
Yeah.
So that's like super common for just in this world. If people are like unhappy with their placings, they'll always
Hmm.
like send pictures to the judges and be like, look at this picture. Like, why didn't I place better? And it's like, well, you pose like shit. Like you move bad. Or, like, that one, or and it could go the other way too. Like a photo might look bad because like the lighting is wrong, or
Hmm.
you're just in a strange spot or whatever. So in person is way cooler, and it will just always have people look bigger and more impressive and more exciting.
Hmm.
Um, there was the heavyweight class at the World Championships, and there was two guys that like in person were just like so close. It was Gary Amlinger and Bada Lacan, and in person I was just like, dude, I don't know. Like there was tiny little things to like pick apart, and then when I looked at the
Hmm.
photos later on, it looked um, it looked way different. It wasn't what I saw in person. So
Hmm.
yeah. Anyway, in person is always better. So to anyone listening, go to bodybuilding shows, support your friends and the athletes and stuff. You might actually be entertained.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I imagine the performances are pretty cool. Um, I so let's talk a little bit about when you first went vegan and you were still competing and such. When you switched your diet over, were you worried at all about like losing progress? Because I remember personally there weren't that many vegan bodybuilders back then. Like I've heard of a few, but in terms of influencers, like the only ones I really followed that were pretty jacked were like Brian Turner and like I hate to say this, but John Venus back then.
Right. Yeah. I actually I was scared, and I didn't know anything. As far as like what I learned in college, it was like, well, rice and beans make a complete protein.
Hmm.
Um, and that's pretty much what I did. Like, because at the time I was like, oh, tofu is bad. It's gonna give me like tits, and so I just ate rice and beans every day. Like, I was definitely concerned that I was going to like lose progress or not get
Hmm.
as big as I wanted. And I think I did for a little while because, like I said, every meal was just rice and beans, and it was just like that was fucked.
Right.
And I was dumb about it. Like I didn't do any research or anything like that. I just was like, okay, I'm vegan now. This is what I'm gonna do.
Hmm.
So it did take me a little while. I think probably like a couple months before I was like, maybe I should try and reconfigure things a little bit.
Hmm. So in
And
terms of like dialing in your diet, did you what were the main differences you kind of adjusted?
well, the biggest thing was like doing research into soy and realizing
Hmm.
that also is just a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, that was such a huge myth back then.
Yeah, it's still to this day. Like I talk to people. I mean, I get to talk to a lot of people every day just in my profession, and hear a
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
commonly held beliefs, and that's still very much alive. Um, so yeah, researching that was a huge deal because that unlocked a lot of sources of like sort of easy and common proteins, so like tofu and tempeh and like TVP and all
Hmm.
kinds of that. But it's been like as I think probably most people experience, my diet's been sort of like changing and growing ever since then.
Hmm.
Now I feel like it's way more diverse. Like I think is it Dr. Greger? He talks about, or maybe it was Simon Hill. I don't know. Someone in like the health community was talking
Hmm.
about how many like types of plants you should be eating in a week, and it was like 45 or something like that. I
That
was
sounds
like,
like Dr. Greger might have said that too, because I think I remember him saying something about that, or he had like a daily dozen or something, I think, too.
it's definitely the Daily Dozen.
Yeah, okay.
It just became fun to see like how much diversity can I get, like how many different types
Right.
of vegetables and grains and all that kind of stuff. Um, and again, that's like it's a lot easier in the off season. Like it's pretty simple and repetitive when I'm dieting for a stage, but
Yeah. Yeah. Do you track your calories and macros?
when I'm dieting for sure, yeah. But in the
Yeah,
off season
okay.
right now, it's just like no, not at all. Like I don't even
Yeah.
have an estimate. I would guess somewhere in like the 5,500 to 6,000 calorie range, but
Yeah,
um,
dude. That's so much food.
it's ridiculous. Like I'm constantly just like on the verge of losing everything. Like, if I just go down this stair wrong, I'm gonna throw up. I know it. Uh,
Yeah. That's the reason why I could never, so the most I ever gained weight to, I don't ever bulk to was I think 207 pounds. I just like do not have the appetite for it. I was crushing like 4,500 calories a day and I just felt like trash all the time, dude. Just like
yeah,
sluggish, like no energy, just gotta lit. People do not understand that you really do not want to eat that much food when you get there.
totally. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
so weird. Like especially like competing in bodybuilding where you're getting to like just such immense crazy levels of leanness and like your hormones are
Hmm.
fucked and your everything in your body is just telling you to like overeat and just being
Hmm.
like the next time that I have freedom and I can eat again, I'm going to eat the world and I'm never going to complain about it. And then like
Yeah.
you end up on the other side of the spectrum and you're like, fuck
Yeah.
dude, I have to eat like one more spoonful of oatmeal, I'm going to punch somebody.
Yeah.
um you're like, I kind of miss the days when I didn't have to eat so much and the
It's
grass is
it's
always
always the yeah, it's always the grass is always greener.
yeah, dude. And there's no like I don't foresee ever having like balance in my life until I retire from the sport. And then
Hmm.
like day, you know,
Yeah.
one day I'll be able to just eat like until I'm full.
Yeah. We have I'm sure you're probably the same way. Like just constantly thinking about food that way. It's just like I don't know how healthy I would personally say it is, but it's like what you need to do to like progress. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it's just kind of the nature of everything. And I think a lot of people like, kind of look in and they're like, that's a super unhealthy relationship with food, but it's kind of what it entails.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's another weird thing too about the sport. Like bodybuilding in itself is not unhealthy, but competitive bodybuilding like absolutely is. Everything about it
Mhm.
is like not super good for you. Like extreme weight loss and weight gain and
Yeah.
everything about longevity is saying kind of like the lighter and the smaller you are, the longer you're gonna
Yep.
live. And it's like,
Yeah, caloric
oh,
restriction
yeah,
and stuff.
like, I'm gonna die huge.
Just
So
die a mass monster and go out in style.
that's right. Yeah, and shave like 15 years off my life. But
Yeah, yeah. That's making me think about like like all the Ronnie Colemans and like Rich Pianas and stuff. I know Ronnie Coleman's still alive, but geez, a lot of those Olympian guys, like the dudes who just take everything in the closet, like every steroid they can get their hands on. Those guys are going out so early sometimes, like 45 years old, even earlier sometimes. It's just crazy.
it was a couple of years ago. They got Dallas, is it Dallas Carver or something like
Dallas
that?
Carver, yeah.
28.
Oh my God, he was that young?
I think I hopefully no one fact checks me and calls me an asshole, but he was young, dude. Like it's just getting
Yeah.
younger and more and more frequent, and everyone's just like, "Oh, it's okay. Like this is totally normal."
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
yeah, and
just it's just normalized, but I don't know. I think kind of feel like it should be dialed back a little bit because people are just, that the drug, what is it? The untested side, they're really going down early, and it's just like I've heard it called like a death cult, like t untested bodybuilding, and kind of understand where they're coming from.
yeah, yeah, man. I think hopefully there's I think there's hope. Like this year, especially with the Olympia, I've seen so
Mhm.
much about how people are like, let's make classic physique like the main event, and then like the
Yeah,
open guys can kind of be almost like the freak show that you watch
yeah.
for, but the real art. Um, I definitely believe this is the art is in classic. Like let's not make it like a competition for who can have the biggest cycle and then end up with
hmm
like those giant GH guy. Like let's make it pretty and aesthetic. And yeah, anyway,
Yeah,
I
dial it back to more of like the 80s look with like Arnold and even Chris Bumstead, he's getting too big for classic now, isn't he? He's just like topping off
I mean, yeah,
the weight class.
it's hard to imagine it going a whole lot further before we're like, yeah, you might want to compete in the open,
Yeah,
but he,
seriously.
like, he's still so aesthetic. Um,
That dude has an insane body, man. He looks like a mutant, but like he still has that kind of build like like those like the I guess the classic guys like I guess classic refers to kind of like the 80s look, right? Like the Arnolds and like the all those guys. I don't really know too much about a lot of them, but it's harking back to that look, right?
Absolutely, like Frank Zane is another
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, so I wanted to touch more back on, everything about veganism and such, because we haven't have any time to talk about that yet. All right,
yeah,
so you talked about the four pillars of veganism that Earthling Ed mentioned, right? So what are your opinions about that? What did you kind of want to mention specifically? Is this in terms of like what made you inspired you to go vegan, or is it in terms of like what other people what should inspire other people to go vegan?
yeah. This is more about like how my journey has sort of morphed for
Okay.
one, and then also yes, why I think um, everyone should adopt veganism as like a moral philosophy.
hmm
Um, and the four pillars, I got this like from Earthling Ed. I didn't just come up with this myself, but the four pillars he talks about is like the ethical side of like doing no harm,
hmm
and, like the environmental like benefits, um, or I guess environmental benefits, the protective environmental benefits, and then personal and
Okay.
public health. And now a big one is like pandemic prevention as well as antibiotic resistance prevention.
hmm
Um, and like how that's kind of like worked for me is I actually hopefully this gives me credibility. I don't know, but I used to be a hunter and a fisherman. That was just like the way that I grew up. I lived in Wisconsin for a while. And my dad was an avid hunter and fisherman, and that was something I was like proud of. And it's funny to look back and see my own like beliefs at the time surrounding ethics were exactly what I see when people want to have that kind of conversation with me. Like
hmm
the circle of life, respecting the animal, all that kind of thing. And now, like to me, what's so obvious is if the option is like harm or kill the animal and don't kill the animal. Like the ethical option is obviously not to kill the animal.
Mhm.
That just seems super obvious to me, and there's not really a lot of nuance there. Like, yeah, if you have the option to not do harm, then that's the ethical kind of like not only option but like obligation, I think.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
um,
so many people they go back to the like if I can hunt it and kill the animal myself, and like they try to act like that's like that places them higher than everybody else because they have some sort of connection. But like you said, it's like if you just think about it logically, it's like, well, you don't have to do that at all. Like
yeah,
why do it? Why not just, go to the grocery store and buy some plants?
well, yeah, and not only like it's definitely not the ethical option, of course, but also it's not scalable. But
Hmm.
I think we just hit 8 billion human beings, and like if everyone in Los Angeles wanted to like go out and hunt for all of their meat at the rate that we're eating meat in this country, like we would just destroy like every population of every animal and not have very much
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
It's not like a scalable option, and that's I think like tied into the next pillar being environmental is like
Hmm.
um it's just a lot more feasible to grow plants to feed to humans. But I can't
Hmm.
remember which one. I don't know if it wasn't livestock's long shadow. It was I can't remember the name of the study right now, but it was I think it was one of those fancy universities like over in the UK or whatever. But
Okay,
they
sure.
they talked about how if the world had adopted a vegan model, 75%
Hmm.
of our existing farmland would no longer be needed
Hmm.
because we're growing so many crops that we feed to animals and then kill the animals and eat them.
Hmm.
If uh, if we just ate the plants, like get
Yeah,
your food
yeah.
direct from the source.
Yeah, exactly. And also, all that farmland could, there could be trees there. There could be trees planted there because you don't need as much space for granted, like I'm not super well read on this stuff, but you wouldn't need as much space for, growing plants and such, especially if they can do what do you call it? The vertical farming now. What is do
Yeah,
you know the name of that?
I thought that's what it was
There's
called.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking about, in terms of that would save so much space and you can return all this other used farmland to trees, which obviously capture greenhouse gas emissions and everything.
Right.
So like, it kind of compounds into like a huge factor for the environment, which makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like I know that, obviously there's the whole factory supply chain and everything involved in with distributing food and everything, and that would also compound where like all these things play a part to just help the environment. Um, so yeah, it makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Yeah. And that's also like the what you do with that free land is so almost like unlimited. Like, yes, of course we could rewild it and that would have huge like carbon drawdown effects. One of the options that I heard that I thought was really cool too was like giving land back to First Nations people. Um,
Mm. Oh yeah.
or like building affordable housing. Like there's
Mm.
so many things you could do that would be far more ethical with that land. And not to mention like how much it would pressure it would take off of like endangered species and local fauna and flora and all that. So
Hmm.
anyway, that's a huge one for me. Like I said, that's what kind of got me started down this
Hmm.
path. And it's still very important to me. But yeah, next is like personal and public health. And um, I think that one's pretty obvious. Like any diet is going to be more healthy than the standard American diet. Um, but we know like the the ability of like a whole food plant-based diet to prevent disease is just it's off the charts. Like
Hmm.
it's just heard of both like prevention and reversal for many diseases anyway. It's just it's crazy. So
Yeah, I'm thinking right off the top of my head, the documentary Forks Over Knives, where
yeah,
they showed that you can literally reverse plaque buildup, atherosclerosis in your arteries just from eating a whole food plant-based diet. And that was huge. And it kind of just, to be honest, I feel like it almost kind of got buried a little bit. It was kind of, it was a big documentary at the time, but it's like everyone just forgot that that's a thing. And at least that's my opinion. And it's insane that, they never thought that anything could reverse atherosclerosis, and they showed that it's possible.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. Like Caldwell Esselstyn and Dean Ornish, and there's a third person whose name I forget. They've done a lot of research into that, and I don't know if we can really say that it reverses heart disease, but you can certainly say that it reverses the symptoms of heart disease.
Hmm.
Um, and like that shit is crazy. Like there's Forks Over Knives. There was also What the Health, and of course, as soon as any documentary like that comes out, the very next day, YouTube's just filled with like this documentary debunked videos because no one
Yeah.
wants
Oh,
it
yeah.
to be true. Like we're
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
desperate for that to be false.
Yeah.
Because what's the like? I don't know if you watch Mike the Vegan on YouTube, but
A little
one of
bit. Yeah.
he says is everyone wants to hear good news about their bad habits, and
Hmm.
yeah, so that obviously faces a lot of resistance, but like there's a huge body of evidence that's in support of it. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I don't think a lot of us who eat vegan, like we don't necessarily, want to be different and have to go through all this struggle of finding food and such. We just think it's we strongly believe based on the evidence and everything that it's the most moral thing for, well, obviously, and then also like the environmental and health reasons are a big thing. So like we choose to do it because we're willing to put up with those minor inconveniences, which I think are very minor. I think most people who have been vegan for a while also would agree, but it's not like we want to go through that. We just think it's the best thing to do.
yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's not like a tribal thing. It's not like I need you to do this because it's what I do. Like I
Yeah.
don't give a shit if you're like a junk food vegan or like all you eat is fruit, or if you're raw vegan or whatever. I just like want to stop destroying the planet and
Yeah, yeah,
killing
man.
animals that like on a scale that's so high that we can't even fathom, like 80 billion land animals. Like we can't even fathom a number that's that big. You can write it down
Yeah.
and say it, but like that's a number that's like beyond comprehension. And
Yeah, plus all the marine life and everything. It's absolutely insane.
yeah, astronomical. Um, so yeah, and then of course the last pillar, which is obviously like really relevant now, is like
Hmm.
prevention and the prevention of antibiotic resistance. And like if you like the listener, if you're unaware of this, if you look up emerging diseases right now, 75% of emerging infectious disease is zoonotic. It comes from animals. And it's because we're doing everything that they told us not to do during the lockdowns. That's what we're making these animals do, again on a mass scale. Like they're confined in tiny spaces that are super like usually not, they're indoor, they're not well lit, they're maybe not well ventilated, they're just like stuck in these
Yeah.
spaces.
And they're just living in their own shit, basically.
Yeah, dude, like just squalor.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's like creating tons and tons of diseases. And then there's somewhere between 60 and 70% of our antibiotics in this country are fed to livestock. And like one
Hmm.
day,
Hmm.
like worst case scenario, we'll get to a point where antibiotics just don't work anymore. And like, can you
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
falling down and you scrape your knee and you get gangrene and you have to chop your leg off? Like
Right. Yeah. I
that's
actually
not
just
the
read a book
world.
the other day. They were talking about just how much more penicillin they have to use to make it effective. And it's something like it's an absurd number. I really can't recall correctly, but it's like 800 times as much or something. It's like an absurd amount. And like obviously don't quote me on that, but it's some crazy number where it's like, this is a real thing. Like antibiotic resistance is a real thing. And they're constantly trying to figure out new antibiotics they can use to fight these potentially super viruses and stuff that are going to be coming around, but not even just that yet, just other diseases that are becoming more resistant to the antibiotics that we've had. So that's a very real thing, man.
Yeah, it's scary, man. Like I don't want that. That's ridiculous. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, all of that stuff is just like seems pretty ironclad. And whenever someone wants to, like, when I obviously a lot of people think that they have found like the key to their own health and their own success, and I don't doubt that. Like someone that's doing like the fucking carnivore diet or keto or whatever, like if you say you feel great, I believe you. I'm sure that you do. But what I kind of like notice most of the time is they're focusing solely on like their own health, or maybe it's like everybody, like if everyone does this we'll all be healthy, but it's usually just that one factor, like what is
Hmm.
healthy for humans, but it's not taking into account the impact that would have on the environment, or
Hmm.
whether or not it's like kind to be killing all those animals, or it's usually like a singular focus. And I just don't see that with any other like diet or lifestyle where it's like this is the best for the big picture, for the planet, and for like everyone that we share it with.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. You know what I mean? And that another big thing about, climate change is that it's just slow process and we're not really experiencing it too much firsthand, where we don't think about it too much. But, it's obviously, if you trust the scientists, which you should, then, you should know that this is a real thing and like this is really happening. And then also like in terms of just the animals being killed and everything, I don't think most people look at the meat on their plate and think like, that was once a live pig or whatever. They just don't really think about it. They understand, but they don't think about it. Just like, this is meat I've been eating my whole life. Like, what's the big deal? And if you show them footage of like, a pig being slaughtered, though, they're gonna be like, they're gonna get pissed off at you because you're
Right,
gonna be
yeah,
like, why
it's
are you showing me
crazy.
that? It's messed up.
Yeah, I know, yeah. And then of course like every single person ever only gets local grass fed fucking all that bullshit, but it's like, well, 99% of the meat in our country is factory farmed, so I guess that just doesn't, it's not real, like
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
um
another thing there is that like it's not sustainable to try to get everything grass fed. Like if everyone was getting their meat grass fed, there would never be enough space on Earth for that.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy. Like if the whole world were to go that approach, there would still need to be such a dramatic reduction in meat consumption. It would just be like,
Yeah, yeah.
I'll just go vegan at that point.
Right, dude, right. And especially, with the advent of lab grown meat and such, it's going to hit markets really soon. That could be a huge thing. And it's not like, as vegans, it's not like we don't like the taste of meat at all. Like, we most of us have eaten meat before. A lot of us still like mock meats or meat substitutes like, seitan or something, if you want to call that a meat substitute. It's just that we're willing to make that trade-off. But like, I don't know about you. Would you eat lab-grown meat?
Yeah, I don't know about that either. I'm not sure. I like at this point, I like the foods that I'm eating, and I am definitely
Hmm.
like proud of, like I wear veganism proudly.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
and I guess technically that would still be a vegan product.
In my opinion, I think it would, especially if they don't have to kill the first, even then at that point, like if they really did have to kill like I don't know, even like one cow to get endless samples of that cell. I don't know how they would do it. Apparently, they don't even have to kill any animals, I believe, at all. But still, I mean, it's like, obviously infinitely more ethical than having to kill each animal over and over again, to get that meat. So that's something to think about for sure. Like I definitely undoubtedly think it's a more ethical option. Like would I personally eat it? I don't know. I don't I'm sure you're the same way. Like, you kind of don't really crave meat anymore to that extent. Like the texture of like something firm and chewy, like super firm tofu or seitan is good, but it's like I don't ever have a desire for eating meat anymore. Do you?
No, no, I haven't in a long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm curious too, like with it being a controlled environment and
Hmm.
uh, like a sterile environment, especially, a lot of those risks are gone. Like they're going to be able to control how much saturated fat is in there. I imagine there's not going to be any cholesterol in it because there's no hormones if it's like going to be grown in a lab. So like, and obviously no risk of E. coli and salmonella and all that kind of stuff. So like a lot of those health risks are gone. So I wonder if this will have any other negative health implications.
Hmm.
If it will potentially like promote any other sort of disease. Because if not, then yeah, who knows? Maybe it would be fun um, to go out and have like a lab grown hamburger or whatever.
Yeah.
I certainly don't see that becoming like a staple for me, and I would still feel kind of weird about it.
Right, right.
Like, like would you eat lab grown human meat? It's like it's to me, it's equally like preposterous. Like, no, that's pretty strange. So I would definitely feel odd like eating that. But
Yeah.
hmm,
That makes that's interesting you'd put it that way. That makes a lot of sense. Like even though technically this is such a funny subject to talk about, but I feel
yeah,
like even though technically yeah, if they could make completely ethical human meat, like if they didn't have to kill somebody, if they just sampled a cell and like proliferated it or whatever, and grew it into like a human steak, like wouldn't that still be a little weird to eat?
it would totally,
Like,
yeah, it would totally be weird.
right, right. That's such a funny thing to think about because if you really do equate, all meat being the same thing, it's like, yeah, that would still be weird to eat, you know, a, a cow, a cow steak at that point. That really makes me think, man.
Yeah, totally. It is strange. I wouldn't really know until I'd have to think about that more before I did it for sure.
Yeah,
Before I
yeah, yeah,
definitively, but
yeah. Feel out
uh,
the whole, understand the whole process and everything. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. But I tell you what, like I fully support that as an option because I do know, like,
Yeah.
as much as I love sort of like preaching, if you will, about this, I know that there's no
Hmm.
way in hell that
Hmm.
the whole world is just going to be like, oh yeah, okay, well, we believe you, like we'll do it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to fight
yeah,
this anymore. I'll be vegan. Like I know that's not going to
yeah.
happen. This is by far like the most scalable option. What seems to be like
Hmm.
maybe the healthiest option is it removes all of those other like pathogen risks and
Hmm.
everything, and you're not feeding antibiotics to all of it. Like it kind of covers
Right.
the four pillars, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of why I brought it up because I figured, it's a way more ethical option, and it's probably, in my opinion, the way that more people will, adopt, this style of, this lifestyle, I guess. It just seems like the most agreeable option for people who are like completely against cutting out meat, and there's those people like that. So, I do kind of feel like it might be the next step. What do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what all my like. That's what I'm hoping for sure. I'm devoting
Yeah,
a lot
yeah,
of energy into like bringing this into reality.
yeah.
So yeah, fingers crossed, man.
Word. So I just want to touch on a couple more things. We've been doing this for about an hour now, so I kind of want to go back really quick to one question that I had to kind of draw back the bodybuilding and the veganism together. So obviously when you're competing and stuff and when you're at this level that you're at, people find out that you're vegan and they must react to you in some way, right? Like you're a big guy in the gym just in general. And when people find out like you eat a plant-based diet, how do they react to you?
Um, well, in competition, it's always like shock, and I usually try
Hmm.
not to like say anything until after it's over. Like especially if I've done well. Um,
Hmm.
then yeah, then I like to kind of drop the hammer, and everyone's just like, "What? Like that's
Hmm.
crazy." I just see like lots of shock, and not necessarily like denial, but you pretty much anytime that you tell someone that, they're going to tell you why they can't do it.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I'm sure you've experienced the same thing. So and it's also a lot of like, wow, that's crazy that you've gotten this good of a physique while also being vegan. That's crazy. And it's like, it's really
Hmm.
not. And like my ability to recover is like so much better now
Hmm.
that um, I feel like it's more of an advantage. And also just like a happy accident that happened is like what I had alluded to a while ago is that I didn't really know anything about um, like eating in a surplus and just nutrition for bodybuilding in general before going vegan, and then realizing like I had to do some work.
Hmm.
um that like gave me the reason to really like dive into that and realize what was necessary. And all of because of that I can claim that like all of my success as a bodybuilder has happened since making the switch to veganism, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. In terms of what do you think dietarily is the key to success in bodybuilding? Would you say like it boils down to literally just calories and macros and maybe like, I don't know, creatine?
Okay, creatine, yeah. I do love creatine for sure for anybody. um and yeah, I think that the biggest thing holding anybody and everybody back is just not eating enough food. And
Hmm.
especially now, with in the age of social media, everyone thinks that you have to be shredded all year long, and that it's like I'm gonna try and like lean bulk, which is definitely possible, but takes more time already. And it kind of takes a long time as a natural person. Um,
Hmm.
so that just kind of like adds to that time frame. So anyway, I think it's not eating enough and being too making it too much of a priority to be like lean all year round, like too
Right.
much
Okay.
like getting just a little bit soft.
So if you compared someone eating a plant-based diet versus someone eating an omnivorous diet for the point of, body composition, you would say that as long as they're getting the same amount of calories and macros, that it's like equatable across the board.
I would say so, yeah. The main difference, as like what I noticed in myself, was just a far enhanced ability to recover from my workouts, and therefore like be able to train at a higher intensity. And you'll definitely find that in the research as like how this diet promotes, how it's like anti-inflammatory. So the more that I can like consume antioxidants and let that take care of the oxidative stress from my workouts, like it's
Mhm.
not having to deal with oxidative stress from my diet. So um, anyway, yeah, as far as results and like macro equivalency, then yeah,
Mhm.
if the omnivore and the vegan are eating the same um, calories and macros and micronutrients are all covered and everything, then yeah, they're most likely going to see similar results. But I would be willing to bet that the vegan person is probably just a little less sore. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense with the antioxidants and such too. But there have even been studies, with comparing different types of protein powder, like plant-based first, like animal-based sources, and as long as each source has like uh, equatable amounts of leucine, I think it is. It spikes muscle protein synthesis to like the maximal level at a certain range. As long as they're getting like enough protein throughout the day, really enough amino acids, like they're getting that same MPS response. So it should be fine. I have seen some evidence saying that like people on a plant-based diet might need a little more protein, but honestly, like I feel like it's mostly semantics. And as long as you're just lifting and eating intelligently to the point where you're getting enough calories and roughly enough protein, like you're good. And like maybe you only have to worry about that if you're like, dieting to insane levels and like trying to maintain all your muscle.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen the same thing. And like there's so much discussion on like bioavailability of the
Uh-huh.
protein. But the percentage at which it's less bioavailable is so small that if you do eat just let's say like 20 grams more protein than you
Right.
would normally, that covers that issue. And then yeah, you can
Hmm.
get all the acids that you need in the
Right.
amounts that you need them. So yeah, it is. Um, this is kind of a tangent, but that's another thing that I hear people say all the time is like, oh, like a vegan diet's possible, but it takes a lot of planning. And it's like, no, it doesn't. Like it takes maybe a little bit of
It doesn't.
planning. Like you maybe
Yeah.
you're not aware of all of like of what tofu is or where to get tempeh or how to make seitan or whatever. But like,
Mhm.
bitch, if you eat like any healthy diet, like you're gonna have to plan it out just a little bit if you want to be successful. So
Yeah. That's exactly what I always say too, dude. It's not hard. It's just like you have to just know what you're doing a little bit and then just don't honestly just don't be stupid. Like
yeah,
just have a little common sense about it and it's really not that difficult. You don't have to match protein sources. You don't have to, look at chronometer for all your amino acids. You just have to get enough protein, eat a variety of foods. If you're really, really worried, maybe get like a little extra protein, meaning like maybe a gram per pound of body weight. But
mhm.
like I even feel like that's not even fully necessary, but that's just my opinion. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That was one of the like more interesting things that I learned too. Was like again like circling back when I was like, well, rice and beans makes a complete protein. Like, yeah, that's
yeah,
true, but you don't have to eat them at the same exact time for that to still be real because you're getting at the amino
right,
acids
right.
from both of them, and if it comes separately, like it's okay. So
Exactly. And also like just one more quick little thing I want to add to close this out. Um there also is so I've read multiple times that there's literally no plant-based food that is actually an incomplete protein. It's they literally all amino acids come from plants. That's where they originate from.
yeah,
So there's no plants that are actually missing any amino acids. It's just they're probably, there's a good chance they're deficient in some amino acids versus others, but they contain all of them that are essential. It's just, yeah, you have to kind of mix and match. And also, like a lot of plant-based sources, lower in calories, lower in protein to some extent, but as long as you're eating enough of them, you're going to get enough amino acids, you know. I thought that was really interesting.
absolutely. Yeah, I've seen the similar, like the same thing. All plants have all amino acids, just varying degrees, and yeah, it's a lot easier than people think, and getting more and more mainstream too. Like,
Mhm.
now you could drive down the street and go to Burger King or whatever and get
Yeah.
like a plant-based Whopper. Like, that's crazy.
Dude, we're living in the future. It's insane.
It's
For
pretty
a vegan,
awesome.
it's never been easier.
Dude, I know, man.
Um,
I feel like super spoiled. I talked to some like OG vegan.
right.
They're like, yeah, I lived in rural Wisconsin back in the 90s and all I ate was peanut butter sandwiches. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
look, that sounds
Yeah,
horrible.
they're lucky to get like a block of tofu back then, and it's crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
dude. Ugh.
Speaking of which, how would you suggest someone to segue into a plant-based diet if they're already into lifting? If you had to give like a quick summary.
Yeah, I'm gonna just operate under the assumption that they're already eating like a somewhat healthy or even balanced diet. Let's say the typical bodybuilding diet is gonna be like chicken, broccoli, and rice. I'm gonna say
Hmm.
continue eating your broccoli and your rice, and then just like swap out the chicken breast with some high protein tofu,
Yeah.
or tempeh, or seitan, or whatever. If you're eating like, if for whatever reason you're eating cheese, then just like grab a different kind of cheese, which is,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like or follow your heart or whatever. Like start
Hmm.
making small swaps. Like for me, I'm very much an all or nothing person, which is why I dove in head first and had to like learn by, it was like trial by fire. Like I had to learn
Hmm.
through failure. So I understand some people are not that way, and it's going to be a lot
Hmm.
maybe easier to just start making those small swaps in the beginning. But like you don't need to completely like tear it down and build it up again. Use your foundation that you already have and just start switching those things out. Um,
Yeah.
and like look to the internet for help, because there's like everything that we as humans have ever learned is on the internet. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And you can like seriously go to YouTube and like if you're in the mood for pizza, be like, how do I make vegan pizza? And you can like anything that you want, you can make vegan. So
Yeah.
um,
that's a perfect summary in my opinion. It's exactly what I always say whenever anyone asks like the best way to go vegan, especially if they're into lifting. Yeah, just swap out like those animal products for the whatever you want to call it, like, the vegan versions of them, the follow your heart cheeses, the Violife cheeses, whatever, the silk soy milks, or you can even go like they have like Next Milk now, which is they have like whole fat 2%. It's literally like they make it so easy now where it's like the same macros, same calories. It's just so that's great advice, man. I love that. So let's yeah, so I think we touched on everything, man. I think this is a lot of really, really great info. Do you have anything else you feel like you want to close out with, or anything
Um,
else we didn't touch on?
I definitely feel, like we kind of covered the whole thing. That was a lot of topics, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I like to end on hope. It's super easy to be like everything's fucked lately, especially the last few years, but um, it does seem like the movement is like growing and getting bigger and becoming way more mainstream, and we're seeing like almost like unprecedented amount of sort of like kickback or like fighting against the movement.
Hmm.
But the reason that is because it's also like becoming way bigger and has like such a larger spotlight on it right now. And I think that's kind of like what I want to focus on is it's like veganism is kind of a big deal at this point. It's growing, and I think a
Hmm.
lot more people are waking up and just understanding, if it's wrong to harm A, then it's wrong to harm B, and that applies like in every battle in human rights over our
Hmm.
whole history. And now it's like starting to hopefully become a little more apparent. If it's wrong for me to kick my dog, then it's certainly wrong for me to stab a cow.
Yeah.
Like just I think it's all coming together. There's like hopefully an awakening that's happening, and that's what I see, and that's what I hope continues to happen.
I love that, man. That's a great way to close out here. And it, like you said earlier, it's never been easier to go vegan. So that makes it really easy too.
Totally.
All right, Zach, where can people find you on social media?
On Facebook, you can just look up Zachary Belknap, and that'll link you to my athlete page as well, which is I think it's Zachary Belknap, WNBF Pro Bodybuilder. On
Hmm.
Instagram, it is just my business name, Bold Body Fitness LLC, and that's all I got. I'm
Cool.
simple. Yeah,
You do online coaching too, or just in person?
I am. Yeah, I'm actually like sort of like newly getting into online coaching, so I'm happy to say yes to that when I was previously saying no. So yeah, if you're at all interested, I am super happy to help out. Especially, I mean, I work with all clients or all people, like regardless of how they eat, but
Hmm.
especially if you're interested in veganism and or bodybuilding, then reach out to me because I'd love to work with you.
Hell yeah, dude. Thanks again so much. We touched on so much good info here. So thank you so much for your time, dude. And thanks for putting up with the technical difficulties.
Yeah, thank you, man. I was afraid again, like I said, it was like my Wi-Fi or my computer or something like that. So anyway, I'm super happy to do it. Thank you for having me on, and I look forward to hopefully talking to you again soon.
Sweet, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Ethics Approach podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't already, it would mean a ton if you gave the podcast a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Stitcher, Player FM, Pinecast, or any other service you're listening to it on, and if you subscribe to the Ethics Fitness YouTube channel, Instagram page, Twitter, and Facebook page. Feel free to check out the articles, training and nutrition programs, coaching services, and merch on ethicsfitness.com. And if you like what I'm making, dropping a like, commenting, and sharing would mean a ton to me. Thank you so much again, and I'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.